Hey folks, and welcome to CarStarz' 10 Wild Facts about McCormick's Coyote X in the 1983 TV series, Hardcastle McCormick. Fact number 1. Impressively, there was only around half a dozen different custom-built and or heavily modified vehicles used to portray the Coyote X prototype road race car throughout the whole 3-year run of the show. That may seem like a quite low number considering that most other car action heavy TV shows of the time went through dozens of stunt vehicles portraying their main characters' vehicles, but there is a reason for this difference that we'll get into a bit later on. Each season had a designated trio of coyotes prepared, with each one being set up specifically for a different purpose, one being the actor-driven hero car for close-ups, one dialed in for handling for the fast chase scenes, and one set up for jump and off-roading stunts. Fact number 2. Probably the most common quandary about the Coyote X in general by fans is just what the heck is it exactly? Well, the answer is a bit complicated, and it's certainly not any regular production model car that anyone could just go out and buy new off a car lot at any point. Although the most common assumption across the web these days is that the Coyote X was just the McLaren M6 GT replica kit car known as the Manta Montage, that is not quite the case, but it is quite similar. While certainly directly based upon the aforementioned vehicle, the body of the Coyote X was actually a fully custom-made created design by designer Mike Fennell of Mike Fennell Restorations, who created the original mold for the Coyote's unique fiberglass body. The body was then fitted to a modified Volkswagen Beetle chassis. Fact number 3. However, the Coyote's design story doesn't end there. As any viewer of the show could plainly recognize, once Season 2 kicked off, the Coyote suddenly appeared strangely different than it did in the first season, with a significantly wider and more square roofline, along with gull-wing doors. The reason for this odd inconsistency is that for Seasons 2 and 3 as well, a set of completely different cars were built to portray the Coyote. Unlike the original cars, these new Coyotes didn't have entirely custom-created bodies and interiors, but instead were built upon a modern production vehicle of the time, which was the DeLorean DMC-12. However, it still took an extensive amount of custom body and chassis work to convert the DeLoreans into Coyotes. Although Fennell's custom body molds were once again utilized, he was no longer with the group at that point, so these modifications were now being carried out by a related company called Unique Movie Cars of Las Vegas. Fact number 4. Getting into what powered the Coyotes, while it certainly wasn't a throaty 12-cylinder Ferrari or Lamborghini engine that you so often hear dubbed in, unfortunately. In reality, there were a number of much smaller and far less impressive 4-cylinder Volkswagen engines used in the original Coyotes. For the first season Fennell-built Coyotes, 2 different flat-4 VW engines were used, which were the Type 1 and Type 3 that originally had just between 40 and 65 horsepower with a 4-speed manual transmission. However, engines were modified with performance upgrades, bringing the horsepower up into the lower hundreds range depending on the needs on the specific build's purpose. It should also be noted that these VW engines were not the same engines used in the Porsche 914 as so many websites out there state incorrectly. The second and third season DeLorean-based Coyotes utilized their stock and much heavier V6 engines, outputting around 130 horsepower to a 5-speed manual transmission. Even when just stationary or at low speeds, you could see that the rear end squatted the suspension down the rear a lot more than the original lighter VW engine Coyotes. You could also certainly tell just from watching early on in Season 2 especially that the stunt drivers had a bit of a learning curve with the rear end heavy DeLorean based Coyotes, as that booty has some serious swinging action going on in the corners for sure. Fact number 5. The original Jump Stunt Coyote had the most significant modifications and was built upon a custom tubular off-road buggy chassis instead of borrowing the standard Beetle base. Some additional modifications included a full roll cage, tripled up off-road racing shock absorbers, and additional performance upgrades to its Type 3 VW engine. The vast majority of the jump and off-roading stunts performed were done within the first season of the show with the original Jump Stunt Coyote, as the later seasons mostly just reused footage from Season 1 for the jump scenes. The primary stunt Coyote was quite ingenious with its very lightweight and strong tubular chassis, as it could be used again and again without damaging much more than cheap fiberglass. Although they did go through a lot of fiberglass for sure, they fortunately didn't actually destroy any of the Coyotes entirely, which certainly kept costs down for the studio. This was actually a fairly low-budget show in general, and they were always concerned with the possibility that they may destroy one of the few built Coyotes on hand and may not be able to commission another build fast enough to replace it. so that ultimately resulted in very few actual new jump stunts performed throughout the last 2 seasons. There was actually a DeLorean-based jump stunt Coyote build as well, but was used very seldomly and mainly just for this one street jump scene shown here mid-season 3, oddly enough. Fact number 6. As per stunt coordinator Gary Combs, stunt driver Gary Himes was the only person that was able to drive the original chase car throughout season 1. This was because Himes had the car set up with an unusual custom position pedals layout that Combs described as just plain awful. This uniqueness in the Chase Coyote's driving setup did present a problem, however, since there was only one chase car at the time, with Himes being the one and only person willing and able to drive it. So if anything major happened to Himes or the car, it could halt production. Such a situation did occur towards the end of filming the first season. During some high-speed stunt driving for a chase scene, Himes lost control of the car and crashed into a light pole, busting the car apart badly. Fortunately, no one was hurt though, and they were able to piece the car back together enough to finish out the season. It was this incident that really gave the necessary push to create a new set of Coyote cars for season 2. Not to mention the difficulties that senior actor Brian Keith that played Hardcastle had entering and exiting the original Coyotes as well, so necessary changes to address these issues were certainly forthcoming. Fact number 7. After the show ended, the original first season jump stunt Coyote eventually found its way into the hands of famous Hollywood custom designer and builder Jay Orberg, who converted it into this custom show car that he named the Tazmobile Roadster. Jay was also the designer for the Knight Rider 2000 films, which he used a similar front-end design on this interesting creation. For those of you who don't know, Jay has created some of the wildest off-the-wall custom car creations that one could imagine, as well as too numerous to list movie and TV cars over the last 50 years or so. The Tazmobile Roadster was last listed for auction at Barrett-Jackson's back in 2010, minus the actual Taz character on the back, that is. Interestingly enough, the car is still on the Barrett-Jackson website with the status still showing as available, as you can see here, so it's possible the current owner may still be trying to sell it. Fact number 8. 4 years after the series ended, the DeLorean-based Hero Coyote actually had a brief cameo in another popular 80s TV show, Married with Children. It was shown briefly in the 1990 Season 5 Episode 6 of the show, and the car was renamed to Improda for the scene, named by the set designer Richard Improda. Fact number 9. The closest thing that you could buy to the Coyote car in the market at the time was the original Manta Cars Company Montage kit car. However, that company went out of business around the same time that the show ended back in 1986, and there are no companies out there offering pre-made or even full kit Coyote or McLaren M6 GT replica cars at present. But if you are a dedicated enough fan to want to build up your own Coyote-like Montage today, there is still a company out there with a Manta Cars namesake that still makes some Montage parts, and they can help you source what you need to build up a replica. You can check them out over at mantacars.com. Fact number 10. Luckily, a number of the original screen-used Coyote cars still exist today. Most of the surviving Coyotes from the show are in the hands of dedicated fans/collectors, such as the original Hero car here. Some have also landed in museums from time to time, such as the DeLorean-based stunt car that the Valo Auto Museum had for a time, but then was sold off in 2011 and is now in the Hollywood Cars Museum owned by Jay Orberg in Las Vegas. You could also go visit the Season 1 Chase Coyote as well, as it currently resides in the Rusty's TV and Movie Car Museum located in Jackson, Tennessee. Well, there you have it, folks. Thanks for watching, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you like what you saw here. You guys are all great. See you next time.